Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I am back to post a quick video here. This is actually going to be a contest response. I have about three of them that I've been meaning to kind of, get caught up on and have an opportunity to sit down and do a response to. And I finally got a moment this afternoon, so I thought let me, at least try to respond to one or two of them while I have some time. And this is going to be a response to Chris, what lurks on channel, I don't know if it's X or 10. Um, but I was watching some videos this morning before I left the house, and I had a chance to check out Billy Hurst, his response to Chris's contest. And like a lot of the ways, or the way I typically tend to find out about contests, is seeing someone do a response and I follow it back to the original post. So had a chance to kind of go to his channel and check it out. Became a new sub, and definitely looking forward to kind of getting to know him a bit better and seeing his collection and hearing more about his taste in music. Um, but yeah, I mean, he had a great kind of simple, straightforward idea, and I just wanted to kind of jump on board and give my 2 cents. Basically, what the question was, just kind of sharing your top 10 favorite drummers, that type of thing. So I went in and picked out a few. Of course, there was a few that kind of came right off the top of my head, and there were some that I kind of sat there and thought about for a while. Because oftentimes, when you put it in the context of your favorite drummer, is that from a skill perspective or just, what they do just in terms of being behind a kit? Doesn't necessarily mean that you're, all over the place and doing all this complex stuff all the time, but just my judgment on that is always revolving around the impact that they have on the song, period. So that has nothing to do with me to how all over the place, how, if your kid is as big as the entire stage and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my criteria. So again, kind of keep that in mind as I go through and do the responses. Now, another thing that I did here was there were a few that I left out because, I could easily pick more than 10, number one. But there's also a few that I thought, these are ones that'll probably get picked by a bunch of people, so I'll go ahead and use that as a deciding factor to leave them out. So stuff like, like Maiden, Sabbath, Van Halen, um, even kind of going to, because I know that Billy picked, White Zombie, or a few. So there's a number like that you kind of know. Those are just kind of given some of the absolute best, and even some of the ones I picked are too. But I decided to leave them out to make room for some of my other favorites. So let's just kind of jump right into it. I'll start off with one which I don't know if people may not know this one as much because this band never got like huge or anything. But this is Opiate for the Masses, and I saw them live a number of years ago and had a chance to kind of meet them and all that good stuff. But it was really cool because the drummer for Opiate of the Masses at the time, his name was Seven, is what he went by. And I had never heard of them before. They were actually opening for, I can't remember which concert it was. I'm getting them all jumbled up. But I remember just like sitting back. And, the place is not really that packed at the time because, again, they're opening and everyone's not there yet. And it was a smaller venue anyway. And this Seven dude was just, I mean, just watching him on the kit was unbelievable. I mean, he was just completely and totally in a world all by himself and was just beating the hell out of that kit. And so after their set, I think there was two other bands that came on after them. I ended up catching them at the bar. I just kind of went up to him and just said, "Dude, you were pounding that kit. That was unbelievable." And just like a lot of those those guys, he's a beast on the kit, and he was almost soft-spoken, almost seeming shy up there at the bar. He's just a really, really great guy, and he thanked me up and down for even saying that to him and all this. But yeah, he became I mean, just he blew my mind just seeing him that one night. So he's definitely one that I would throw in the mix that, again, maybe a lot of people haven't heard a ton about him. And what was really interesting, well, I'll move on to my second pick. So the second pick I'm going to go to is Larkin from Godsmack, which is that little dude right there. And that picture is not like all tweaked up or anything. He really is like that skinny. Like you see him in person and his arms are like this big around. He's one of the most frail looking guys I think I've ever seen. But get him behind a kit, oh my goodness. I love it. And one of the things that I was always so drawn to about Godsmack is the rhythmic nature that they have within their music, and like Larkin is really kind of the foundation of that. Like, the guitars will get into a rhythm, and then he's kind of beating around and above the rhythm that the guitars are playing in. And for those that really, really love Godsmack and kind of know all their stuff, I think you know what I mean by that rhythmic thing that they get into and they do inside of certain songs. That's what makes me love them so much. But yeah, seeing him live, which I've seen him 13 times, it never gets old watching him go off on the kit. I mean, that guy, just he's awesome. And so I thought it was kind of interesting because a lot of the same traits that I saw in Seven is what made me like him so much, because I was already a huge fan of Larkin. And so we were sitting there talking at the bar and going on, and I actually said that. I was like, one of my favorite drummers is Larkin from Godsmack, and it's like just the way that he pounds, and it's like, I really got that feel from you. And he was like, dude, Larkin's my buddy, and blah, 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 and we play. And I was like, well, it makes sense then. So that was kind of a cool connection in that regard. So moving right along. Next, we're going to go to my girl, Mercedes from Kitty. She's a beast on the kit as well. Nothing to show on the back, 'cause it's in the freaking frame. But yeah, I saw them live, and I've loved them for the longest time. But then I saw them live a couple years ago, and yeah, I mean, Mercedes is just they all are, for that matter, though. I mean, just beast. Absolutely. I mean, she pounds the kit like there's no tomorrow. I mean, her guitar tone and just, the punch that she brings with her playing. And then, the thing that always killed me so much about her, she gets on stage and she's like, with the deep growls and everything that she does with her voice. And then you meet her off stage and she's just like, voice-wise and everything, like the sweetest girl next door type of thing. You ever heard? It's just like going to that transformation the way she does is freaking awesome. But yeah, Mercedes, definitely one of my favorite drummers. Next, I'm gonna go to In This Moment, and kind of early In This Moment. I'm talking about the initial years with Jeff Fab, who is the drummer on their first few albums. And again, he's another drummer that I just really like. I think I shouldn't say never, I wasn't as impressed by his stage presence. His stage presence was kind of just a drummer doing a good job, with a metalcore type band. But just his actual playing and the way he uses the double bass inside of how he plays and everything else. I mean, again, I just fell in love with his playing. So he's definitely one that I would pull out as being one of my favorite drummers in terms of what he did on the really kind of the first 2 to 3 In This Moment albums, especially the first 2 for sure. So Jeff would definitely be one. Excuse me. Another one I'm going to put on the list here is going to be Phil Taylor from Motorhead. And again, you really got to love Phil. He was just kind of a different kind of drummer. I mean, since Motorhead was kind of a different kind of band anyway, where you could easily hear kind of straight hard rock influences. You could easily hear, metal type of influences. You could hear punk influences. Like, Motorhead just did what Motorhead did. And I think Phil, as a drummer, was really able to kind of accommodate all those type of things. Because every time I listen to the song like Ace of Spades, and you listen to his drumming inside of that really is more of a punk type of drummer in that song than it was a hard rock or metal. And he could just bring it in all those different facets. So I think you definitely got to give Phil a nod in terms of one of the great drummers. And some of these here are probably getting into more of the obvious ones. So, pull out Little Nirvana. Have to go back to when Dave was back on the kit before he stepped out with Foo Fighters. And quite frankly, that's the one thing I think is the biggest disappointment about the Foo Fighters. I shouldn't say even that, because it's not all tied in the same way. But the thing that I like the least about the Foo Fighters is the fact that Dave is out front so much. Because that dude was just built to be behind a kit. Just the way he played, the energy that he played with when he was with Nirvana. I know he does, some stuff now and so forth, but it just wasn't the same. There was just something about the way that he pounds on a kit. Even when they did the induction, when he played drums, they had different lead singers come out and do Nirvana covers or whatever. Even just watching him then, it was just like, that dude is just made to be behind a kit. He has a rhythm to him and a groove, and not to mention just how he plays and how hard he plays. It's just freaking awesome. So Dave is definitely still one of my favorite drummers. Another very obvious one here, of course, Tommy. Got to have him on that list as well. And that's another good example too. When you look at the stuff that he does, and it's not overly complex. Like, it's not all these complicated fills and blah blah blah. But no one beats a kit the way that he does. And you would think it's almost like, okay, if you hit harder, if you turn the volume up or whatever, there's some other element in there that Tommy can do that other drummers just can't. Where you can both be playing the same basic, simple rhythm, but it's just like, how is he getting so much punch out of every time he pounds that snare or that bass or whatever else? And again, he does that better than just about anyone. So definitely have to have him on the list. And I think another number of other people chose him as well. Let's go to one maybe it's a little less obvious. And actually, well, I'll just put it this way. This is Gap Band 4. Gap Band is one of my favorite R&B/funk bands of all time, for that matter. Everything from Party Train to You Dropped the Bomb on Me, Outstanding, just Early in the Morning, on and on and on throughout their discography. It's not all on this album. But, and it's really kind of hard to pick a specific drummer because they had so many different session musicians that played. Like, even on this album, there were 3 different drummers that are credited on playing on this album. But in general, the Gap Band kind of had this formula on their drums and percussion, and it's almost like they never left it. Over all the albums that they did, there was basically a set rhythm that they used for almost every single song, it seemed, and there were about 4 fills that they would do inside of the drum pieces that they had within their songs. And so some people might listen to it, and the first thing they would say is, well, they're really not doing much of anything. It's kind of like the same basic drumming, and it's almost the same in most of the songs. But I kind of see it a little bit different. They found something that worked so well, and it was so great, they didn't just go crazy trying to deviate from it all the time. Much like AC/DC from a percussion perspective. And so the Gap Band, I look at the different session drummers that they used, and we'll refer to it more as the Gap Band style. The Gap Band style is one of my favorite drummers of all time because it just worked and they never messed with it. And like I said, you can go back and listen to any of their songs and you'll basically find there's about 4 different fills that they use in the drumming, and it almost never changed from song to song. Because when you got something that's perfect, why screw with it? Next 3 here are kind of obvious ones, I think, but it also kind of has to be mentioned. I mean, how many people are going to pick this in their response? Mr. Neil himself. Yeah, you can't deny that. I mean, here's where you kind of have the combination of the big, massive, huge kit and all the skills that go along with it. And of course, I picked this album because when you look at songs like Tom Sawyer, which is the one that everyone knows and it's so played out, but it's like, is there a drum riff, if you will, or a drum section that's more well known than what I refer to as the breakdown in Tom Sawyer? I mean, everybody knows that, everyone air drums it. I mean, when you put that on the map, you kind of have to make sure you include his name in any type of. But there's a million different songs you can go through with Rush and pick out the genius of Pert, though. So another one here. Again, some people I think will agree with, and there's probably just as many that may not like him. because Lars tends to catch a lot of flack, but I think Lars as a drummer is pretty darn strong myself. And I picked this album too, of course, because, you know, on here, this is where Lars kind of had an opportunity to show out drum-wise because of the way that they mixed this album and all of that. But I think Lars is a great drummer. I mean, I think he keeps things simple, but it's just complex enough to make it like his and his style, which I really like. But yeah, I mean, it's Lars. I mean, again, everybody knows him, and I think he's a fantastic drummer, without question. So he definitely has to go on the list. All right, and then last but not least, I'm gonna go with my man Vinny right here. You know, Pantera. And I think Vinny goes back to what I was saying about a couple other drummers there too, where it's not about the complexity of his drumming. I think with the whole groove thing that Pantera did, it's like his drumming was almost like this, in my mind, like this southern rock type style, like this southern groovy type thing that fit in so well to the type of groove that Pantera put into its overall catalog. And Vinny was just an absolute perfect fit for that. So a lot of the stuff, when you really listen to it, I mean, there's a lot of stuff with Pantera that's not even, from a drum perspective, it's not even that upbeat. It's not that, but it's just that groove pounding rhythm that was just kind of hitting you on the perfect wave, and, you know, made Pantera freaking great. And, you know, that was good old Vinny behind the kit. So again, those are my 10, 11 picks. I'm not sure how many I had there. But, you know, again, I left out a bunch that I thought would be a bit more common, like I said, like Iron Maiden, you know, Black Sabbath. Who else you throw in there? Like, you know, Anthrax, Slayer. I mean, obviously, they've had great drummers as well. Who else? I actually kind of like Max from the E Street Band. I think he's a pretty good drummer, too. I don't like watching him in terms of his presence, but just in general, I think he's a pretty solid drummer as well. And we're not even going to get into the whole jazz side. That's a whole different ball game. But so yeah, there you go, man. Again, congratulations on the 200 subs. Glad I saw Billy's video and I got over here to your channel. And as always, VC, let me know what you think, and we will talk to you guys soon. All right, take care, guys.